Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rail Lovers Podcast, the only podcast on the internet that is going through the top 250 Letterboxd movies of all time. And I think it's almost perfect for me to. I found out this news just pretty much just about 3 minutes ago before actually recording. Letterboxd decided to just throw a curveball at me and just change their rating system, the way they score movies and stuff like that. So I feel like I should read an article from the blog post that they literally just posted today. It's supposedly they changed it to kind of better reflect kind of make the list more diverse and kind of make it more fair instead of having Across the Spider-Verse come in and just be shot to number one right away. But I'm just gonna read the this blog post just to you right now, and then I'll explain what I'm going to be doing going forward. Because most of these movies since they changed the score, most of the movies I'm going to be covering after this movie that we're going to be covering they're pretty much gone. But this is what Letterboxd has to say. Today we've made the most significant change to our weighted rating calculations since we launched in 2011. This means that as of now, our official top 250 looks a little different, with a new number one, as do several of our other official lists. We're doing this because our platform membership has grown from a few tens of thousands in our first year to closing in on 10 million today. Wow. We've become more susceptible to ratings distortion, some orchestrated, some not. Ratings distortion happens whenever the weighted average fails to capture the sentiment of our whole community for film. The Letterboxd weighted rating is a score that film fans across the globe have come to trust. It's our responsibility to make sure it continues to be accurate and fit for purpose over a decade on, with some future-proofing built in, and it goes on from there. But basically, most of the movies that we're going to be covering later on are basically off the list. So I'm making the executive decision to continue covering the movies that I had planned to cover throughout the rest of the year. And then once this year is done, we're just going to shuffle all the movies. Letterboxd has a really clever shuffle feature that you can use on the Letterboxd lists. So we're just going to shuffle at the end of each episode, and then we're just going to plow through the list that way. But yeah, thanks Letterboxd for changing this. This is really going to be really helpful. And but yeah, anyways, with that long-winded introduction, I have to introduce my co-host for today. He's going to be helping me talk about the film that we're going to be talking about today, and that is Umberto D. And the co-host is going to be Kale Smith from the Youth Critic Podcast. Kale, welcome. I know we've done multiple retrospective podcasts on your end, but welcome to the Rail Lovers Podcast, Kale.
Well, thank you. It's so nice to be on the other side of this, where I can just come in and talk.
Right, right.
But yes, thank you, Marley, for bringing me on. It's a true pleasure to finally be on Real Lovers Podcast.
Yeah, and sorry about that long-winded introduction, but
No, not at all. I have a question for you though, and just to not be on a tangent, but do you think this is for the good? How do you feel about this? In terms of,
I think it's from what I just read from this article that that wasn't the full article, but I think what Letterboxd is obviously trying to do is that they're trying to compete with Rotten Tomatoes, and they're trying to be kind of get perceived as a legitimate rating source.
yes,
and I think that and they don't really want to have I know Across the Spider-Verse came out and shot to the number one right away, and that's totally fine, but to have it pass all these other kind of classic films,
amazing movies,
it kind of seems a little bit unfair. And I don't want to I can't speak for Letterboxd because I obviously don't work for them. It's just I wouldn't be surprised if maybe they got a little blowback a little bit of hey, how come I know this film is great, but this film is also decades or centuries old. It's it means different, and so I think they're just trying to be more diverse, and there's nothing wrong with being more diverse. So
Yeah, and I think it's good for them to just try very, very hard to like stand apart from Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic to be like, okay, so this is what, but even IMDb,
mm-hmm.
like this is like, because this 250 list, you sent me a like a spreadsheet of it
Mm-hmm.
earlier this year, and it's like there's some really good movies, really good like diverse content. It's not like, it's not like, you have The Dark Knight and Shawshank Redemption over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Nothing against those movies, but those are like the classic, like, just people, like general people just like rate those very highly.
yeah. The one thing that kind of like bums me out a little bit is that like going through this list, I've been doing it for about 6 months now, roughly around there, and most of the movies that I've been kind of covering have been relatively the same. Like there's not it's either a film made by a white dude or a film made by an Asian director. It's like Asian or white. It's just kind of like a toss up like here and there. Like there's no like black like filmmakers anywhere in there. There's like barely any like South Asian like directors anywhere in this top 250. So hopefully like this new rating system will start seeing like more directors of color kind of like pop into the list and not just like shoot to the top of the list like Across the Spider-Verse is because everyone is just hitting 5 stars. So it's like, yeah, it's going to be weighted. So
yeah, and that's totally fair. I mean, Across the Spider-Verse again is a great movie. It really is a great movie, but you don't want a brand new spanking movie to be like, this is the best movie ever made.
Right.
So,
exactly.
yeah.
And like Letterboxd even said like in the article, it's like this, like we started out with like tens of thousands of users and now they're like pushing towards 1 million users. So if 1 million people rate Across the Spider-Verse 5 stars, then like,
of course,
it's just gonna it doesn't look good. Across the Spider-Verse is great. It's fantastic. I give it 5 stars, but it's there needs to be fair. It needs to be fair and balanced. So
exactly.
But yeah. But everyone can go read that article out on letterboxd.com. It's on their journal side of like the website. But yeah, but other than that, Kale, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was having a wonderful Monday, and Marley recommends this movie to me, and I'm like, okay, okay, I'll watch it, and because I've seen your list, I've seen what movies are coming up, and your movies are kind of, a little upbeat. There's a couple in there that are, very, dry or mediocre, or not mediocre, like just very, they're not audience fair, and so I was like, okay, Umberto D. Well, I went completely blind to this, and I walked out. I think I walked out a different man. Literally, I walked out as completely, just shattered and broken human being.
Yeah, we'll have to get into that when we get to our featured review of Umberto D. But I always like to start off the podcast like to ask like the guests like what we've been watching like this entire week since like before we got totally shooken by Umberto D. So Kale, what have you been watching?
So let's see. I've watched last week I saw The Flash. Went to an early screening of it and did not love it. And we'll do so for the Youth Critic Podcast. We haven't done YouTube. We haven't done a review since Across the Spider-Verse. Sorry, Transformers: Rise of the Beasts, which I've also seen, by the way. It's also whatever. But The Flash to me wasn't, not to go on a tangent, just wasn't as great as I hoped it would be. And I get it. Like there's the whole Ezra Miller of it all. There's everything that's surrounding the movie. The movie's cursed. But even despite all that, you genuinely do, especially if you're a film fan or a film critic or film anything, you just want to love the movie. And I kind of walked out just not feeling anything. But the good news is I also saw another movie where I felt everything, which was Past Lives from Celine Song. Is that what it is? Is that what her name is? Celine?
Yeah, it's her... it's our directorial debut, which is
impressive.
Yeah, an impressive directorial debut. I also saw The Flash and Past Lives. I basically kind of feel the same about like The Flash as you do. The Past Lives, on the other hand, I've had a really interesting experience.
You told me about this already,
the,
but
the
yes.
the like my screening, like the movie stopped and started like 3 or 4 times, and the lights like came
Oh
up,
God,
and
I would be screaming.
I was screaming on the inside just because I knew the guy that like, and he was working like by himself, and I was just like, I'll just let him figure this one out. But I am not having a good time right now. But it's from what I did watch of it, I really did enjoy it because I thought that like it was kind of like a perfect movie about like relationships, on how relationships come and go, and how people into your life at like kind of like the right most perfect moment in your life, but also like the most awkward moment as well. And
Mhm.
I thought it was like the way they kind of like dealt with that was like so natural and like unique. But like, what did you think of it? So
For me, so that whole trailer. Every time I saw the trailer in front of a theater, or in front of a movie, it always like brought me to tears because it's just like this beautiful longing romance of like these two people who loved each other as teen or preteen, and then they meet up. We didn't know about that they were going to meet up in the middle,
mm-hmm.
but we knew that they're going to meet like 30 years later. One is married, one is kind of just in between relationships, in a situationship, if you will. Um, and I love like how Celine's song doesn't just go for like, because a lot of these kind of romances, they bring out the situational comedy, or they go for like the heartstrings of like these people realize like how much they deeply deeply love each other, and now they have to like drastically course correct their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And what I feel, and not to go into spoilers because I don't want to spoil a great movie, but the way I think Celine handles it, everything in this movie feels just like you said, very natural and very very well done. And I love the movie. I feel like the performances were great, and then the cinematography, the way Celine like composes her shots and everything. I mean, she just it's amazing. I said this on Twitter already. I genuinely hope like she just gets whatever she wants to do after this. Like she just really nails her debut here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, no spoilers for Past Lives, obviously. But another thing I really like enjoyed by it, like I mentioned how like natural it was, but there's no like real like villains like in this movie. Like even like characters that you would think that probably would be a villain, like they don't necessarily like have like that path. Like it's just people existing. And like I feel like out of like with the movies that we're getting today, where there's always has to be like a take, I appreciated this where it was like a breath of fresh air for me.
Exactly. And look, there's lots of other movies where they tackle the subject matter in a more romanticized way.
Mm-hmm.
But Celine, I think, takes a very realistic approach and a very natural approach, and something that just like really profoundly moved me. And I don't know. I just feel like her storytelling abilities are just so like it's so great to see a debut director just come out, and her storytelling abilities are just already this fine tuned.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm very looking forward to what she does next, and we'll probably touch not to like promote my show a little bit.
Go ahead and promote. Go ahead and promote.
Um, but we will probably talk about Past Lives. The only reason we probably won't do it this week is because it's only opening in theaters like everywhere next weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know when this is coming out, but it's coming. But it's coming out June the 23rd everywhere. So, and I was kind of really lucky to see it at the one Atlanta theater and it was a great. Not to brag, it was a great movie theater. Good, one of the better AMC's.
Yeah, unlike my experience
Yeah,
at a local independent small theater, but
I would.
it's
Yeah, if I were you, yeah, Marley, I hope you can watch it again, and because it really is a great experience. And then, so the other thing I've been watching is the Indiana Jones franchise. And to cross promote even more, so Marley and I are doing an Indiana Jones retrospective. We just released the second, or Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom today. Today of this recording, excuse me. And Last Crusade will be out on Wednesday, the 21st. And then, and then so on, so on. And we're just kind of doing this as a build up to Dial of Destiny. And we've been having some fun so far, talking about people shitting and bobbing on set. It's just been a joyous time. And we have other guest hosts. Have you had any of our other guest hosts on the show yet that your audience would know?
Not yet, but they're planned. They're planned. So coming soon to the Real Lovers podcast.
All right. Okay. I was just wondering because I was like, has this person? Okay. But yeah, we've had a great time talking about the Indiana Jones franchise. We also it's a different way of looking at things. We talk about the production history and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you want to know a lot about Indiana Jones and know what a bunch of really well-known, well-knowledged moviegoers know, check out our Youth Critic retrospectives on the Indiana Jones franchise.
Of course, all the links will be in the description down below. I think I'm pointing in the right area. Wait, hold on.
You were pointing down.
I think I'm pointing in the right area. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all you've been watching.
Yes. Sorry for all the back end promotion. But
no.
But that is what I've been watching is those three different things.
There's a reason why I didn't put the Indiana Jones franchise on my list, so you could actually promote it, because I know that we're both watching it, and I'm actually having a really great time revisiting like those movies. I'm kind of discovering like how much I love them. Well, the first two, not the first, not Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, and then Last Crusade, but yeah. Everyone should go check that out. Links will be in the description down below. Mm-hmm. We've already talked. What was that?
I was about to say you've covered Raiders on the show already with another friend of mine, Alfie Amaya. So
yeah, and we go listen to that one if you want to hear shit on it the entire time. So
I promise we didn't shit on Raiders of the Lost Ark in my podcast. So
yeah.
Completely.
You should listen to them back to back just so you can get two different perspectives. So.
Exactly, the duality of man.
Right. Like I said, like I've seen The Flash. I don't think there's really anything else that I can say that is different than what you had to say. I thought it was like totally like mid. I know that's like the popular thing to say.
It's aggressively mid.
Yeah, it's aggressively mid. I think that's kind of like a perfect way to describe it. Like, I was never really a fan of like Ezra Miller as the Flash to begin with. I thought I was more of like the Flash TV series like fan. I like that Flash a lot more, and then like the animated series as well. And seeing like Ezra Miller just like, I don't know, there's just something that felt off, and even that wasn't like I went in, tried to go in like clean slate as possible without kind of like the baggage that they have like on this film. But even with that, I couldn't shake how mediocre like this entire film is. It's just like, bring on James Gunn. That's all I have to say.
Well, and to top off your point, the reason why for me, and I'll explain this more on the podcast, because I'll do a Flash podcast sometime this week. The reason why the Flash to me doesn't really work is because we've not really spent enough time with Ezra Miller as the Flash to have that kind of story. Doing this kind of movie where we've only just spent like the Flash in the Joss Whedon cut, not in the Snyderverse, because that's where I guess everything is canon at right now. We don't have enough of a character to really do that. It would be like if we did the first X-Men movie, and then we did X-Men: Days of Future Past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like that was a sequel.
To kind of add on, look what you just said. It's when I was watching this, I was like totally surprised that I was like, dude, this is like the first time Ezra Miller has like a full on like Flash movie. Like they were always like a sidekick in like Justice League, and like I think they were obviously in the Snyder cut, but it just this is just shows how of a mess DC is, where it's just like they can't get anything right.
And I've been thinking, yeah, and I've been trying to figure out a way to like write it all down, because it's like I don't know if I can quantify it in the podcast yet. But the thing is, it is such a mess, because we built to the Justice League in a very rapid succession, and then after that, it's like we're gonna do the Birds of Prey, which is a good movie. It's a good movie, but it's like it feels like the A characters got like really, really, shafted.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality they should have been the forefront, and then you could have the B level, character, or the B and C level characters like Birds of Prey or the Suicide Squad. It feels like we did this all backwards.
Yeah, I totally we did or they did it backwards, or they just kind of like threw shit against the wall and saw it stick. Because this isn't a spoiler because it was all over the marketing. I know a lot of people didn't see the trailer, so there was a lot of my friends that were like genuinely surprised, like when Michael Keaton showed up as like Batman, and I'm like, how did you avoid any trailers for? Because like they marketed like the hell out of this as like a Michael Keaton like Batman movie. Like there's a poster with Michael Keaton just front and center with no Ezra Miller anywhere in sight, which is it's
so silly.
It's so silly and very telling of like how like just like the production history for like the Flash. But Michael Keaton, like I will say that he was really great like in this movie. Like I really want to go back and rewatch like his Batman movies, because they're not really like in memory as much. But I just like, if the stuff with Ezra Miller didn't go down like the way it did, I think that Michael Keaton showing up the way he does in The Flash would have been like an amazing reveal, to be honest. Like, don't you think so?
I think so too. The only problem with it is they do his universe so dirty. And I kind of feel bad for Tim Burton, because it's like you're watching this movie that's supposed to be like this big, like, hey, we celebrate your Batman, legacy, Mr. Burton. And then they kind of, again, I'm not going to spoil it here, but they really do like trash it. They really do a disservice to his legacy, to me, I feel like.
Yeah, and like obviously people can go listen to the Youth Critic podcast when that episode is out a little bit later in the week.
Right.
But yeah, if they want to know like spoilers on that, but
yeah.
But anyways, The Flash, aggressively mid, and then I mentioned, I watched past
mid.
Yeah, I watched Past Lives. I've already kind of like touched on that.
Depressingly great.
Yeah. That's just gonna be like the title, just like depressingly mid, depressingly great. But speaking of a movie that's kind of like stuck right in the middle of those that you just described, is I saw Elemental this past weekend. I am very indifferent on Elemental, because when I was watching like this in theaters, because I know Lightyear was technically, I tweeted about this and said that Elemental, it's so nice seeing Pixar back in theaters, and then someone responded like, Lightyear was back in theaters, like that's Pixar's first movie back in theaters. I'm like, no one cares about Lightyear.
Yeah, and yes, Pixar did make Lightyear. That is 100 true. You see their fingerprints all over that movie. But the problem is, but what I think you were trying to imply is, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think what you were trying to imply with that tweet was, this is like because Pixar's so known for their original movies and being like even more original than Disney is. Like taking chances and telling these weird, stories, these like, very, these like non-binary stories, and Elemental is more of the Pixar speed of like, let's take these inanimate objects or these things that we kind of take for granted and tell stories and make characters out of them
and hit you over the head with generational trauma. So yeah, I generally had a good time with it. I feel like my only issues with this movie is that there's 4 different stories like kind of like taped together, and 3 of them are like half baked and one is actually really great. the one that's really great that I really enjoyed is like Elemental is essentially an immigrant story about like the fire people like going to like a new city and kind of like trying to make like a life for themselves that how they can't really fit in like with like the other elements. I thought all of that stuff was really interesting. Then it kind of like spins itself into a romantic comedy and just kind of like a generational trauma like type story, and just like I it started getting a little bit too big for itself, like second and third act, and that's where I was kind of like, what is this movie and all? But like then it would kind of like reel itself back into like the whole immigrant story, and I really like enjoyed like that aspect. So, but the fact that that the director of this, Peter Sohn, was kind of like going back and forth, kind of like talking about like all these different elements that no pun intended, all these different elements that he's putting into the story, is that it felt like he was kind of like struggling to like get everything in there all at once, because there was a lot of stuff that he wanted to like tell. But so like the typical feeling that you feel at the end of like a Pixar movie where you're just crying your eyes out, I didn't really get that like to the extent of like an Up or like a Toy Story 3. It kind of like I didn't know what to feel, but it's still very emotional. So at the very end, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but I plan to see it this week. Just I haven't had a chance at all, and because of the podcast, and also when Past Lives like came out at this certain theater in Atlanta, I was like, I'm going to see that instead of Elemental. Like that's the more important film for me to watch.
Right. Well, I highly recommend that you check it out like later this week, because like even though it is kind of like I would say like a 7 out of 10, like I give it 4.5. I give it 4 stars on Letterboxd. Like it's all right, but it's not. It's kind of like middle of the pack for Pixar. But like I said, like I'm just glad that Pixar is like back like in theaters, like making like original content, and like making content with like, or making films with like voice actors that are unknown, essentially. Because, and that's kind of like the whole point that Pixar was like making films in the first place. They weren't like trying to be like a DreamWorks, like trying to and getting like a Tom Hanks or like a big star.
Cameron Diaz, Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy,
yeah,
Woody Allen.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, everyone should go see Elemental. I think it's really it's a beautiful animated like story, and just like really funny and just clever. And Pixar's back, baby. Pixar's back.
Well, yeah, and it is unfortunate that Elemental is like, it is not as great as like The Incredibles, or not on par with like the original like bunch. But it is very. But I mean, it's what you can do, and I really, really do hope they have a win eventually, because they really were kneecapped by the Chapek era and COVID. So I really hope they can swing back eventually.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've seen the trailer for Elio.
No, because I've been waiting to see the movie.
It wasn't in front of like my like screening for some reason. Like,
well, that's weird.
Yeah, it was really weird. So I had to look it up on YouTube, and it was actually like, I'm excited for it. It seemed like it's like a cross between like, it seems like they're going back to that whole Lightyear like space like adventure, but also like not connected to Toy Story like at all. But one more thing I'd like to add about Elemental: this is like a return to the short animated like feature that they play like before like the movie. I don't think it's like the greatest like short that they've ever premiered in front of like their movie, because it's still kind of like, it seems like Pixar animated shorts now are just kind of like, hey, let's just call back a character that we already used before and then have them do kind of some crazy wacky thing, and then you'll cry at the end of it, because that's what we'll do.
Yeah, it's almost like this movie we're about to talk about. So
yeah, but
or what it sounds like, I should say, because I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, it's called Carl's Date, and it's basically just Carl from Up, and he's just going on a date, and he's just hanging out with his dog, and like it's cute. It's fine, but it's nothing like Bow or anything like that. But like Bow is like, I think it's their strongest short.
I mean, it was so strong that they gave Domishi, I think that's what her
Domishi, turning red.
Yeah, it's so strong they gave Domishi like immediately like a feature length movie.
Yeah, well, that should have been in theaters. That should have been their first movie in theaters. But
I know that was such a weird experience because I saw the trailer like 2 months before it came out, and then like 2 weeks later, it's like, no, we're going to Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's dumb. Like I really hope they bounce back from that era because Pixar deserves better. But yeah, the last thing that I want to talk about, it's not a movie, but The Bear is going to be the season 2 is going to be coming out of that, and I've gotten a lot of heat like on social media for not finishing season 1 just because season 1 is really rough. I'll just say that, like, it's anxiety inducing, and at that time when it released, I wasn't ready to watch a show like that. So I'm getting caught up before it drops on June 22nd, which is when this podcast will be out. So when this podcast is out, I will be watching The Bear season 2, and I'll just have to say season 1 is great. Like, it's probably one of the more unique like shows that I've seen. Like, just the way it's shot, and just like the way everything is cut and edited, how everything is just like super quick and just like, I don't know. I love everything about The Bear. It's like super raw and like dirty. Jeremy Allen White is like a full-on star. But yeah, everyone should go check out The Bear. It's on Hulu. But anyways, that's all what we're watching. What are you watching? Let us know in the comments down below. But that's pretty much what we're watching. Let's get into our review of Umberto D. That was a trailer from the the 1952 film Umberto D, directed by Vittorio Di Sica. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. He's an Italian filmmaker. He also directed The Bicycle Thieves, which is another like classic like film. But Umberto D is part of the Criterion Collection, and I'm just going to read the synopsis here from IMDb. When an elderly pensioner, Umberto Domingo Ferrari, returns to his boarding house from a protest calling for a hike in an old age pensions, his landlady demands her 15,000 lire rent by the end of the month, or he and his small dog will be turned out onto the street. Unable to get the money in time, Umberto fakes an illness to get sent to a hospital, giving his beloved dog to the landlady's pregnant and abandoned maid for temporary safekeeping. What a romp! Like,
this is like this. Yeah, what a joyful movie!
What a joyful romp!
I know, so funny and lighthearted. I mean, who knew that a man holding a dog before he almost jumps on the train would be so joyful and happy?
Yeah, spoilers, by the way. But
we're talking spoilers for like a 70-year-old movie.
Yeah, exactly. But I was kind of dreading to do this episode, to be honest. Not because I was going to be doing it with you, Kale. Obviously, I couldn't wait to do an episode with you, Kale. But I kind of wanted, like, you have like 3 other films that we're going to be covering, like on this series that I'm doing, and I'm more excited to watch. I'm more excited to watch those than I was to watch this. Not saying like it's a bad film. It's just like the last 2 films that I covered were like, it was Coco. Coco was the last film, and that was so like happy, joyful, and just like a little sad, but I didn't feel like I wanted to cut myself after watching like a movie like this.
Yeah, I did not feel. Yeah, this is like I feel so sorry for audiences that are like going from Coco, which I mean, there is some sad moments in it. There is some very like happy, sad, tears of joy moments. But I mean, this movie, if you're going from Coco to Umberto D, uh, I feel really. Wait, so Marley, what's the? Can you say what the next movie is yet, just so we can go ahead and tell people that it'll be joy?
The next movie will be RRR, so we'll be
Okay.
so it's they'll get a
Oh
they'll get a
my God.
relief after this.
Okay. I mean, RRR has like some very rough moments, but I mean that movie is.
It's
Yeah,
hopeful.
that movie's a romp.
It's hopeful.
It's a romp.
Yeah.
So okay, so this was at one point what where were we 237 on the scale for top movies in Letterboxd.
It was 236. It's currently at 207. So apparently someone really likes this film because it keeps rising the ranks, and I
Bless
need
their
to meet
heart.
I need to meet those people that actually enjoy this movie because this is not trying, because I know it's like an auteur film, and like they're like those type of films are big on Letterboxd, but like that's kind of like the one like drag with doing this series is that I get so many movies that are just like this, like that are just a complete bummer. But
Yeah, where it's like it's meant to be a slice of life movie, but it's like the most like critical of like society and just like a complete down, like this person just has like the worst luck ever.
yeah. Um, one
Mhm.
like I don't think there's no need to kind of like break down like the plot in this because there's no real plot. I basically like read
Well, you
exactly
just
what
described
happened.
it.
Yeah, I just read exactly like what happened. But like one of the interesting things that I did kind of like find like from this movie, especially like the way this film opens. It opens with like a protest of like people protesting, and the people protesting were elderly people. And normally, like when you see protests, they're usually like in their late 30s, kind of like maybe younger than that, because like those are the more common. Those people would be those people would be the people that would be more angry with like the system that isn't working for them. But it was interesting,
Exactly.
kind of like
It
seeing
is
like
now.
yeah, exactly. But it's very interesting seeing like elderly people kind of like protesting, and just the way like that scene was shot, where the bus is driving through the crowd of people, and it doesn't even stop. And I'm like, as soon as I saw that bus do that, I was just like, okay, my hands are up. My hands are up for like this movie. Like it's ridiculous, but but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean we opened with with basically a strike, which is very relevant right now in
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood for Hollywood.
Yeah.
And and even worse, like they can't even strike because like they're run off by police,
Mm-hmm.
so they can't even be heard. Like that's even like the most. So it's not even like they have the right to protest. They just cannot. Like it's a capitalist system where they can't even like fight for their rights.
Yeah,
So
to stand up. We're
yeah,
gonna fight for our rights to stand. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
yeah, but no, you're right. It's just like it's very much of we can't even like be heard. Like we can't even have like these rich these rich people like be like hear us out because like they like because no one because I mean we're struggling. And what's even more apparent is so after the strike that ends very abruptly, we meet three different people who were part of the strike, and and two of them are just like, yeah, we really just want the increase. We got family and stuff if shit gets real.
Mm-hmm.
And then we meet the one guy who has no family, no money saved, no nothing. He just has this pension to stay afloat, and he really needs an increase in his pension so he can to
live.
survive. Yeah,
Yeah.
like so he can live.
And it's like
And this
seeing
is the guy
this
we're following.
seeing this happen to like elderly people in movies is like it really hit close to home for me, just because like living in California like I am, like with our rising rents, and like I know plenty of elderly people that are in senior homes, and they're raising the rents on elderly people, and like most of those people are on fixed incomes, and it's like the
Yeah,
fact that like this landlady like was just demanding like the most, like demanding 15,000. I hope I said that right, like liar or whatever. Is that like the Italian currency or something like that? But
Lear, I think.
yeah, but I looked up the exchange rate, and it's like that's like a $600 a month roughly, like
Oh wow.
yeah, but it's like just like especially like what that landlady was doing too, like she was basically Airbnb-ing like her apartment complex for prostitutes, and because she
Yeah.
wanted to like kick out like the man that didn't have like a family and stuff like that because she hated him, but she wanted to kick him out so she could like make more money on like these prostitutes, which is just like it's so dirty. And it's just like
It's so fucked up.
yeah, uh I don't know.
Yeah.
Like this movie is such a bummer. I don't really want to spend that much time on it just
Yeah,
because.
no. So, but yeah, you're right. So we open, we see, we have get. He goes and has like a soup kitchen dinner, or what looks. It looked like a soup kitchen, but it's actually maybe a restaurant, just because
Mhm.
there is a waiting staff there.
Mhm.
But we don't see anyone pay, so whatever. Okay. But anyway, so and Umberto, so in this moment, like he's trying to feed his dog, but then he's caught with the dog because you're not supposed to have dogs in restaurants.
Mhm.
And poor Flick, I mean, he has dogs have no idea what their owners are going through at any given moment. So his owner is like going through the worst, and but he like is so like loving and so loyal that Umberto has to like trick him into like playing ball or stick just so he can like go walk off and leave him forever or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is not a joyful movie. I can't. It's hard to make joke of it just because the subject matter really is real. It continues to happen, and it probably will continue to happen as you and I are in the same generation. It'll
Mhm.
probably not, and it'll get worse and worse and worse as Social Security becomes next to nothing or
Mhm.
mean very little. And to me, like watching this movie was like this weird, like this very scary premonition. So this movie is like a horror movie because it's like you're old. You can't just be like, well, I guess I'll go back to work,
Right.
um, and just work myself to death because I can't, because my pension sucks. It's not even that. It's like you're just too old to work. You're too old to go and find work and get a job, and so you're just stuck to the whims of life.
Mhm.
And also you have to care for this dog, so it's just like the situation just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's why. And so for me, like watching it, just like I feel so sorry for this bird, like I really do. And then he has to kind of be like a father figure to this pregnant maid who also just so happens to be abandoned by her parents.
Mhm. It's like
uh
everyone no one really was having like a great time except for like the landlady, but I feel like the only reason why they made like that character kind of like having a good time just because she's supposed to be awful. Like like the
yeah, well,
director
she's
clearly.
she's profiting off of other poor women,
Mhm.
having to do the dirty deed in her basically whorehouse.
Yeah. And also just like when like Umberto was trying to sleep, she would just be like up like late at night like singing with like her like choir friends and stuff like that, and he was like trying to sleep, and I'm just like this movie was like it's reality at this point. It's like it basically should be a documentary, just even though it's like from 1950 1952. There's so much that rang rang true to like the lives that we're living today, except like I'm not trying to joke like with this movie, but I feel like we kind of have to like pepper in like a little humor in this because
levity.
people just so people don't like off themselves while listening to this episode because it's just like
or write this movie off because this movie to me is a great movie. I just don't. But I do warn people like it is like 90. You need like a pickup in after this.
Yeah, but like the one thing that I thought was a little bit funny is that I knew immediately that this film wasn't set in America because like one of the main plot lines is that he fakes an illness so he can go to the hospital so he can like have like a free meal and like have like free room and board and stuff like that. That ain't happening in America. You go to the hospital and then you have like a $15,000 bill. So it's like,
yeah,
you like here in America,
walk out with a 60,000 lire bill.
Yeah, like here in America, if you want like free room and board, you might as well just like murder someone or something like. Not like I'm saying people should do that or anything like that.
For God.
Or not just commit like a crime, like just like steal something, steal like a movie or something like that from Walmart, and then go to the jail, and then you'll have free room and board. So.
I mean,
I don't condone. I'm just saying, but YouTube don't.
You simplify the prison system like you simplify it, but I guess sure. I mean, because homeless shelters are few and far between, and yeah, like we live in a not to be even this. I don't want to sound this cynical. And we just live in a world where people
live in a hellhole. Live in a hellhole.
in this movie, like just shows like the different the ways of like how humanity has failed.
Yeah, and just like the way we treat elderly people too. And like I know like on TikTok, like Gen Z likes to make fun of like the Boomer generation for like not knowing anything, but they did set up like they set up a lot of failures for like our generation, but they did kind of like they did pave like we shouldn't blame them for everything. Like they deserve to be made fun of when they make outlandish statements and racist statements, but like sometimes it's like I have to like take a step back and be like, you know what, the Boomers did do some good somewhere in there, even though they did dry up most of our resources. But
well, and also they're not at fault. Like they had no, like you have to go with ignorance, the side of ignorance. Like not everyone's going to know like the impact, the implications of something 50 years from now. So even now, like there's stuff that's happening today that we are not going to know the implications of until we're like in our 70s and 80s. And we're going to be like, and hopefully we have the cognizant then to realize, how awful it is. But then again, some elderly people are going to be, but then even now, like some Boomer people are just like, they don't want to even know how bad it is. They know it's bad, but they don't want to, it's too awful to think about.
Yeah. I don't really want to get political, but it feels like it's almost impossible not to get political. This movie is very political. This is why I'm such a big supporter of like a universal basic income, and I've been saying this since I've graduated from college, since I like graduated from high school. It's like, why don't we have a universal basic income of like just like $1,000? Like if you think about it, like $1,000 every single month, you can do whatever you want with that. Like our government would. Like it almost seems like they would gain from that, but based on like how much like they tax us. It's like, but it's like whenever I bring that up, it's like, oh, no handouts. You got to earn what you get, and I'm like,
right, you're right. Well, it's so Marley, you're right. It's the government investing in the people, and if you invest in the people, that's how our economy grows. It's that's how our economy grows. Is that if we give someone a piece of pie and then they give it, like if I hate to use the Joe Rogan allegory for capitalism, but
please don't mention his name on this podcast.
Okay, the JR, the redacted podcast, But I mean, he does have a point of like, the capitalist system our economy should work in this way where, I give you a piece of blueberry pie, and you give me a piece of apple pie. I know I'm simplifying it, but but you understand what I'm saying. I give you this piece of pie, and it shouldn't be to where, and the only way we survive is if not everyone has the blueberry pie and the apple pie.
Mm-hmm.
And the one apple pie, slice of apple pie that they don't have is shared amongst 5 people, or in a group of 6. So
Economics 101 from Kale Smith, ladies and gentlemen.
That's how our economy should work. Like, and so in a way, so yeah, I mean, and then of course corporations, they don't always invest back in the people, so you have to go, well, government, can you step in? But no, you're right, there's so many people that are just like, we don't want to hand out. And the attitude of our nation, again, this is weird, we're talking about American politics for an Italian movie.
Well, it's I know it's an Italian movie, but there's so many like connecting pieces when I was watching this, like that connected to the world that we're living in today. And the fact that this movie is like from 1952 and I'm still able to kind of see like those connections, and that we didn't solve any of those things, like, even no matter if the film's Italian or anything like that, like, I'm sure like the same people are going through the same struggles that we are going through like right now, like no matter where they're at. And it's so frustrating that we're still stuck in the same like position as we are now. Like, we're able to like get on a podcast, like you're on one side of the world, I'm on the other side of the world, and we're able to like talk about like, this movie, but we can't get basic income down. So it's like it's so weird.
Yeah, it's like, and it's just like, and it sucks. And also I should mention, for this movie, Umberto used to work for the government. Like, he used to like work for like the Ministry of something, I can't remember, but he used to work for the Italian government, and that's how he collects his pension. And it's so telling that, like, in this, like, this guy worked his whole, like, so much is told about this person, through just offhanded dialogue, that you just have to like make a story in your own head about this person. This person went his whole life not having a family, or probably did have, like, tried to start a family, and then that family either left or it just never happened. And so now he is alone with this dog, and he's just trying to live like till he, croaks. And he just can't do it. Like, he can't physically afford to do it. Like, that's what is so sad. He worked and labored for 30 years, and now when he's like at his weakest, like, we can't even, like, the government refuses to like give him a livable wage. What I will say about this movie is, I think the reason why it ranks so high is because it is the ultimate, like, just feel bad movie. Like, there's a lot of movies that like were born out of this, that were meant to, that kind of inspired more filmmakers to go into more bold routes, and more, like, dark and gritty, like, be, nihilistic and mean, when this movie really feels more like it's just trying to be honest and truthful. It's trying to be, like, this person, like, this is a person who just has nothing left. And I feel like that's the whole point of the movie. And I do love, the acting and all that. And I do love, like, the character, like, it's still, like, he's just a normal human being. Like, he's trying to give her advice because the pregnant woman doesn't know who the father is. It's kind of like a Meryl Streep and Mamma Mia situation. So I don't know. I just, like, I love the movie. I love the dog. Like, the dog is, I think, giving the best performance in the whole movie.
Yeah, and just like just everything about that end, where he wants to end it all, to jump in front of the train
with the dog,
and the dog is just squirming, like, let me out. And if I'm the dog in that situation, the dog after was just like, I don't want to deal with you anymore, you fucking depressing fuck. I'm just gonna walk away. And then all of a sudden, like, the dog's just like, oh, I guess I'll hang out with you. You do have food. Well, sometimes, but at least you're gonna feed me. But
Well, it's the idea of, it's just the idea of this guy, the dog is like trying to lure him away from the suicide. Like the dog is like literally the only reason this person's alive, because everything else, like, I mean, this man has just lost everything. And what's even sadder is like he's trying to pawn the dog off to like a little girl or like this dog boarding place, just so like he can just get it over with already. Like if that one, like Daniela had taken that dog, was allowed to take that dog, like Flick, he would have just jumped in front of the train like 5 minutes later.
Yeah. That would have been a depressing ending. But what did you rate this movie, Kale? Like out of 5? Like, what was your Letterboxd rating?
I mean, this is tough because I'm not sure if I'll ever watch this movie again. But because this movie, I mean, because here's the thing, this movie gives me PTSD because so much of life right now for people who, for just like for our sake, right, for a lot of our lives and a lot of people our age, like they're just stuck in this rut of like bad jobs or poor savings or can't afford to live outside their parents or whatever, not to get close to home, but that's where a lot in to see that this might be the future of a lot of people where they don't have their entire family dies off, or they never were able to start a family because they were too poor, or they or just like circumstances just prevented them from having a family, so that later on they could just live with the pension of living with their burdening their family. I know that sounds awful, but that's like the better case scenario if this is what you have. So it's just it. So I mean, to me, it's just like to me, it's more horror movie. So to give you honestly, I would give this movie actually a 4.5 stars out of 5. Like it's a solid movie, very well directed. I mean, they get a performance out of a dog.
Yeah.
I mean,
and also incredible, like just like dog directing too. Where like they had this dog do like several things, like beg, like up on his hind legs, and just kind of like I don't know. This like the dog trainers like on like this movie where I'm not sure if they had him like back then, but they did a really great job telling the dog like what to do and stuff like that. But I gave it 4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. I'll never watch this again just because we're living it. This is the hell that we're living in right now, and with the hell that we're going to be living in the future, based on like everything that is going on like in our government like right now, with like not canceling student loans and just like the future is grim. But
it's as grim as Umberto's future, because now he has to take care of this dog. And while there's this twisted irony of man's best friend, of like, the dog will probably more likely make sure he stays alive until he just succumbs to just forsakes him. But I mean, because this person, like, they really like this movie. I do not condone suicide. This is not where I'm going with it. I'm just saying this person really does have nothing left, unfortunately. Like, it would take an act of God for this person to have, like, and even then he might, die of just like, of just like the trauma of someone helping him.
Yeah. And on that wonderful note,
yes. Okay. Yes.
On that, this movie may be grim, but not the Youth Critic Podcast. It's actually an uplifting beam of light. Kale Smith, where could the good people find you online?
Okay, you can find me on Twitter at Movie Kale. This is where you can.
What a pun! Wait. What a segue! But continue.
Hey, Marley, next time invite me for a really nice movie.
I will. You had volunteered. You volunteered. You're like, I'll join. I'll come on.
Well, no.
I've never seen it
Marley,
before.
Well, to be fair to Marley, I'm like, this will be kind of fun. It's interesting. I love doing podcasts with Marley. We've done 10 Fast and Furious movies, and now we're about to finish 5 Indiana Jones movies. So I'm like, this is gonna be great. It's gonna be fun. I watched this movie and I'm like, and this is my debut, and I'm like, I even texted you afterwards. You're like, God damn. Like, and you're like, what, the ending? And I'm like, the whole movie. But Marley's right. We should move on. Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Movie Kale. I'm also on Instagram at kale.smith.90. I don't know. That was my given Instagram name. And then you can, and also I run a podcast called the Youth Critic Podcast. It is where I and guest hosts like Marley from other shows and podcasts and whatnot, they come on and talk with me about the latest movie that's coming out. So this week we'll be talking about The Flash. I believe the Flash episode will be out around either the same day or the next day after this podcast airs, give or take. Excuse me. And then we also do the Youth Critic retrospectives, which so Marley and I did, for 2 months, the Road to the Fast Saga, where we covered all 10 of the Fast and Furious saga movies, for the exception of Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs and Shaw is not family. They're good work friends, but
they're distant cousins.
Yeah,
distant cousins.
Well, I say work friends. Let's be real. They're friends from work. Right. So they're
the work family. Work family.
Exactly.
When corporations say we're like family here, that's basically Dwayne Rock Johnson saying, "Hey, we're like family, right?" And we're like, no.
Sure, whatever makes you sleep at night.
Right.
Whatever makes you sleep through your sweat. So we've been doing we did the Road to the Fast Saga, and then we did, and currently right now we're doing just a mini retrospective series just on the Indiana Jones franchise, where we've just done Last Crusade. Temple of Doom came out today of this episode, and Marley's on there. So if you love to hear Marley's thoughts. And if you loved what Marley had to say on Raiders of the Lost Ark, or even hated what he had to say, come listen to the Indiana Jones retrospectives. We're having lots of fun. And next week, just as a little bit of a self-promotion and tease, Marley is going to rewatch Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which he has never finished.
Nope. I have never finished that movie. I walked out of that theater right around the second act. I would say when Shia LaBeouf is swinging through the trees. That's when I checked out. I remember that specifically because everything. If you were to tell me what happens after that, I could not tell you.
Good grief. Okay, so we are going to. So you're gonna hear what Marley actually thinks of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull next week. Okay, that was a long way to say where you can find me, but. Yeah, and Marley, thank you so much for inviting me. And also, I mean, I know this movie really is depressing, and this movie is actually kind of really important too. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's always fun to talk to you. It's always fun to do this, and I cannot wait to talk about the other films I'm on for the show coming up.
Yeah, I always like talking to you too. I like talking to everyone about movies, and this is why I'm doing like this podcast and just inviting everyone on, just to talk to like-minded people about the movies that we love and movies that depress us, movies that make us cry. That's the whole point of the Real Lovers podcast. You can follow me at Marley Loves Film because that's what I love. I love film. You can find me tweeting on the twatters, Marley Loves Film. You can check out my Letterboxd reviews at Marley Loves Film. Pretty much everywhere. Just type that in Google. I pop up. You can follow this podcast at The Real Lovers. Let's see if I can point to the right place. The Real Lovers on YouTube, and then Real Lovers Pod on Twitter, and then Real Lovers Pod on Instagram and TikTok. Also, this is a little announcement that this is the first time I'm announcing this on an episode. Ooh. We also, the Real Lovers Podcast, we have a Patreon now. So you can go ahead and click the link in the description. You can donate a dollar, $1, you can help contribute to keep the lights on here at the Real Lovers Podcast. That's all I'm asking, $1. I try and keep
Marley has to feed his flag.
I gotta feed the people that come on here, and also just because that's my goal is to invite people on and pay them to come on and like talk about movies, and then also pay to keep the lights on, pay for StreamYard, and just like everything that I use to kind of keep this podcast going. All I'm asking is $1, and then you get access to our Discord community server. You get bonus episodes, you get live community streams. This podcast will still be for free, but all I'm asking is for $1, and you'll get more content if you donate. So yeah, the link in the description, and yeah.
The reason why it's so important for you to support people like Marley, and really any podcaster that has a Patreon, is so you can get better content, so you can not, and also like, we as podcasters, we do this on our spare time. We do this, it takes lots of time. Me and Marley, for each of our shows, spend a lot of time to perfect and make sure everything goes smoothly. Not everything does. There's always, YouTube errors, or the SoundCloud link, is busted. There's stuff that we can't control. But if you help us and pay for us, the more we can kind of spend more time fine tuning and actually, getting to, those mistakes a lot quicker and addressing all those concerns. And, and also it just helps us, the more you help us, the more, the content will stay good. So it's not so you're basically just paying for us to make sure, that you're paying for, and you're investing in us to, as content creators. And that's why you should support Marley.
Well, thank you for that. It's not a requirement. I just put it out there because I was just like, if I get 25 people, that pays for the servers. That basically pays for the servers and stuff like that. And I try and keep the production costs for this podcast as low as possible. I'm not asking for people to pay for my Netflix account, or because why would I do that? Because I would normally pay for a Netflix account if I wasn't doing this podcast. So I'm just asking for what makes this podcast possible. But yeah, donate if you want. Link will be in the description. But other than that, I am Marley Silverbrand for the Real Lovers Podcast.
And I'm Kale Smith from the Youth Critic Podcast.
And keep watching movies. We'll see you next week when we're talking about RRR. Peace out.
Awesome.